All right, great. So, welcome again to our webinar for the day on the new MP editor. We'll go ahead and get started. Hopefully everybody's all settled in and can hear me okay. If you have any questions during the webinar at all, feel free to just go ahead and ask the question. There's both a little question sidebar there, and you also have the chat window, and feel free to use either one of those as we're going through the webinar and you have a question or two. So with that, let's jump over to essay and get started. So let me close that. So for those of you who have already played around a little bit, of course, the MP editor, same place it's always been, right? Scripts, create, edit, measurement plan, or if you have embedded measurement plans, you can edit it directly from there. So let's go ahead and open up the new MP editor so I can show you some of the basics of it. So the first thing you notice when you open up the MP editor is the layout is a little bit different, right? On the left-hand side here, we have our main list of commands that you can browse through real easy or very easily search. So say I wanted to, I don't know, notify user text array, right? I can very simply search for it. Comes up in my command list here, and then as I double click it, it populates into my script right there, and we have our command in our script. Or if I wanted to do something else, I don't know, let's say concatenate strings, right? Build up a long string here. I can simply double click on it, and it shows up in my list there too. All of the terminology or the naming stuff from MP is all the same. So when we talk about step numbers and argument numbers, all that stuff is the same as it's always been. So we have step 0, which is notify user text array, and that has argument 0, argument 1. Same here, step 1, argument 0, argument 1. And a lot of the things that have existed all the time are exactly the same. So on my concatenate string step here that many of you probably have used already, see it's a string ref list is the description, the type is input strings, and then here's my method, which is enter or enter values, and I simply click where it says empty, and I get my string list editor. Same string list editor you've already used to, and I can add as many strings as I want to it, or clean it back down. So I'll just put in something. Right, it's just simple string list there. So I can build up a string from a couple of different entities or entries. Yeah, so we go ahead and add those. So our search here with our commands, our main MP here, and then a neat little trick is you can always drag and drop and move these around however you want. So really what I wanted to do is I wanted to build up that string first and then notify the user. So I can just grab the notify user step, and you can see as I drag it around, it gets a new position, right? So I can drag it to the bottom, move it to the bottom, drag it to the top, goes there, move it around. All right, so we have that. The next new thing about the editor is we've added, in addition to the methods here that have always existed, we've also added little links on the right-hand side here. So I can have edit text, which of course brings up the little text edit dialog, and I can type in whatever I want. Or I can change that over to a reference. So I change it to a reference, and then I go to fill in my reference. And you notice when I click to fill in the reference, this highlights. So anything that's referenceable will highlight for me, so I can simply click there and it fills in. Or even cooler, what I use much more often is instead of switching from edit text to reference here, because referencing in MP is really common, I just simply use the quick buttons on the side. So if you hover over, you might notice, I'll use the bottom one, enter, reference, variables, which we'll get to in a moment, and then dialog entries for ones that have dialog entry capabilities. So I'll use the quick button for reference, and you notice I click it, and then I can immediately get my reference. So you can imagine when I'm putting together a slightly longer MP, these reference quick buttons are real handy because it just makes the whole process so much faster. Okay, so real simple MP here. I can go ahead and run it direct from the MP editor. Run, and there's my MP running, right? There's my first concatenated string. Super. So let's grab a slightly longer MP so that we can actually look at some of the cool features here. So I have one little sample file here. And oh, I should probably mention this. On all of these sample MPs that I'm going to play with today, they're all on our website, by the way, or FTP site. So if you go ftpkinematics.com, I'll go ahead and browse through the whole thing. You can go pub, SA, and then install and examples. And inside of that examples directory, there's a whole bunch of MPs, and we broke them up into two main categories. There's functional ones, so a few that are purely about getting job done. And then if we go back, there's a lot of instructional ones, and I'll use some of these instructional ones today. And most of those instructional ones are a combination of SA file and MPs to go along with it. So as I'm playing with any of these MPs today, if there's something there that catches your eye, all of them are available directly on our website for you. So, and this is one of them. This is the read from Excel instructional one. So let's go ahead and edit my MP here. And you'll see it's a nice short 10-step MP. And one of the things you might notice is when I opened it, all these steps are collapsed, so you don't see the arguments, right? That's because when I saved it, I had them all collapsed. So let's expand them back out. So another cool little feature of the new MP editor, as you saw there, is I can real easy expand and collapse any steps I want in any order. I can use Control-A to select all of my steps and either collapse all my steps or expand them. And I can also use the arrow keys. You can't see this here, but on my keyboard, if I have my steps collapsed, I can use the right arrow key and it expands them out, or I can use the left arrow key and it collapses them back down. So these expanded again. So here's my 10-step, or 11-step MP rather, step 0 through 10. And pretty simple. I open a workbook file. I read some values out of my workbook, my Excel workbook, and then I eventually convert those over into a point inside of SA. So I like this as an example MP because it actually does quite a few different things. One, personally think the Excel Direct Connect stuff we have is really cool. I use it all the time. But this also does a good example of going through and debugging. So at the moment, this MP actually looks correct, but for those of you that have used MP a real lot, occasionally you might make a mistake like this. So if I'm going through and creating an MP, you know, it's not uncommon for me to make a typo or a small mistake in one of my references, something like that, right? We all get working a little too fast sometimes and make small errors. And finding those small errors can sometimes be a challenge. So if I run this, or actually let's look at our Excel workbook here for a second so we can see what's going to happen. This is pretty simple. I have simple a point ID and then an XYZ value in my Excel workbook. So the X value is 23.5, Y is 20.9, Z is 10.25, right? Let's close that. Let's go ahead and run run our script here, and so I run my script, and now I have the point in Excel, right? Or the point from Excel. And here's its value, right? 20.35, 20.35, which is my error, and 10.25. So you all saw what happened there is I modified my script so that my X and Y, my Y value was really referencing the X value. So simple mistake, right? But if this is in a long MP or a more complex task than simply reading some values and writing them out to create a point from those values, finding out exactly where this blunder is can sometimes be a chore. So let's go ahead and delete this. Let's take a look at my favorite feature of the new MP editor, and that is debugging. So I can turn on the debugger, the little bug, right? Or turn off the debugger. Let's put in also a breakpoint here just before we construct the point. So by clicking in this little column here, I can create breakpoints, which is the little red, basically a stop sign, right? Breakpoint. I can comment out the line or switch it back and then breakpoint. So let's put in a breakpoint, turn on the debugger, and then I'll run my script direct from here. So I'll just go ahead and hit the run button, and we can kind of see what's going on. It'll run, yep. It runs down to the breakpoint for me, and because debugging is turned on, everything fills in as we go, and I can look at my steps and my results in real time in my directly inside of my MP editor. So it makes debugging and troubleshooting much easier. Of course, we still have the MP Watcher that you can bring up. All right, so the MP Watcher still exists just like it always has, but in place you can also use this, and I find this a whole lot faster and easier for debugging purposes. So flip debugging on and run through my script, and we can kind of see what's going on here. So let's see here. I open my workbook file. There we go. I get a workbook handle of 5. Everything looks good there. And clap some of that back down. I read the string. Okay, there we go. So I get back a string, which is actually 100, which is what's in the workbook. Read a double, 20.35. Read a double Y, 20.9. Well, that's good. So I'm reading the values correctly. Read double Z, 10.25. I read the values correctly. Make vector from doubles, and you can see here's the problem, right? 20.35, 20.35, 10.25. And then make my point name from strings. That looks like it worked out correct. And of course, 20.35, 35. There's those coordinates again, and that's where the bug is. So very easy one to fix here. Simply clean that back out. And it was here, so I can go there. And then want to fill in this reference, and you notice only the things that are valid highlight. That's what's currently selected, and I really want that one. And so I'm good to go. So if I run this one more time just to be sure, I'll put it back in debug mode. And you know what, instead of running it, I'll single step through it. So I do this a lot too, is I'll single step execute my script, and then I can go through it step by step and just watch the results as we go. So I'm on the step here to read the double, and as soon as I execute the step, we see my value fill in. Execute my step, my value fills in, next one. And then this looks really good here, so make vector from doubles, all my references filled in, and there's my new vector, which is the correct one, 20.35, 20.9, 10.25. Get my point name, and then we can see here, construct a point in working coordinates, values look correct to me. Close, exit my measurement plan, and if I look at that point coordinate now, sure enough, it's exactly where we want it to be. Right? Wonderful. So let's grab something else. Let's see here. Let's grab one that has some variables in it. Yeah, let's go ahead and open. Scripts, examples. Let's do this one, plane bisector. I like this. This is a good little example MP. What it does is it allows you to select some planes, and then it creates the bisection, or the bisect between the planes, the mid plane. So we can bisect planes here. Let's go ahead and take a look at this MP. We'll open it up in the editor. And one of the first things you might notice on this particular MP is there's a few steps here that have this little old style name after it, right? You'll see that occasionally with MP commands. And what that basically means is that this particular MP command has more or less been retired. And most likely when a step's retired, it actually was upgraded in a way that can't automatically update itself. So in this case, the check status over range of steps, well, that's been in there for quite a while, and what it did is it checked, it allowed us to check 1 step or 100 steps, a whole range of steps, and then the step itself returned pass, fail, or partial success based upon the steps in the range. So for instance, this is checking step 0 and 1, or from 0 to 1. If all the steps passed, step number 2 will return success. If all the steps failed, step number 2 would return failure. If 1 passed, 1 failed, step number 2 would return partial success. So of course, the very next thing everybody did is they would then do something based upon this range step test, right? So what we did is we combined those two into one command. So the new command here is jump based on range status test, which really combines this and this together. When we did that, we simply retired the old command, and we now have a new one. That's whenever you see that old style, that's what's going on there. And there's a few of those in this particular script. All right, so that's what's going on there. Like I said, what the script will do is it takes 2 input planes. So there's input plane number 1, right? Runtime select. Or I can search here. Let's see where the next runtime select is. So there's the first runtime select, up right there. So there's the next runtime select, select plane 2. So it allows me to select 2 planes, and then it creates the mid plane between them. So let's just run this so we can watch it in action. So I'll select 2 planes, we'll run it. I will select this one and this one. And it creates my plane right there between the 2 planes. And in this particular case, this plane's normal was pointing down, this one's pointing up. I had selected this plane first, and so my normal's pointing down. That's actually one of the features inside of this little measurement plan, is the normal direction will always match the normal direction for your first plane. So let's do another one, another bisection plane. And I'll select the same exact 2 planes, but in the opposite order. So that one, then that one, and so I now have my vector going the other way. So this is a cool little measurement plan. I like it. Let's go ahead and clean up the file just a little bit. I'll delete those 2 planes. There we go. And we can see how that little plane direction thing is handled. And the reason why I want to do this is because we handle it using, instead of a reference, we handle it using variables. So here we go. Actually, I can search here and find all of them. Variable. There's the other one right there. So, okay, so we have variables inside of our measurement plan here, and this variable in this case is a double variable. We call it direction switch, and so in one case it's simply 1, and in the other case it's -1. And then later on in the script, what we do is we use that direction switch to invert the normal vector of our plane if needed. So we basically scale the vector or multiply the vector by either 1 or -1, depending upon the normal direction of the first plane we select. So let me do this. Let's go ahead and I'll put in right here. Actually, I'll do it here. I'll put a right here makes perfect sense before we do it. I'll put in a breakpoint right there at vector scaling so we can see what's going on with this direction switch variable. I'll go ahead and in debug mode, of course, I'll run my script and select my first plane and then my second plane. You can see their normal directions are opposite each other. And then I come down to this vector scaling, and there's my vector and the scale factor. And what I wanted to point out is these variables, direction switch, are all over here, including their values. So you can see right now the direction switch is actually set to -1. So when I step here, one more, that step executes and it reads the direction switch variable, which is -1. There we go. And it inverts my vector. Then I can continue running. And if I drag this down, you can see there we go. I have my plane. Let's do another bisection. So we'll do one more. And I'll single step through this so we can watch. What I want to do is single step through the script, make this a little smaller. There we go. Single step through because I want to watch the direction switch change as I step through my script. So there we go. I'll select my first plane. Select my second plane. There we go. So my direction switch is still -1, still -1. Oh, and there we go. My direction switch just flipped to 1. And when I do my vector scaling, right, the two normal vectors are both pointing positive, so my vector scaling, my direction switch, so to speak, is positive. So I just scale my vector by 1. And when I finish running this, you'll notice I have right there my bisection plane with its normal pointing up. So this time I selected this plane and this plane, so my bisection plane, of course, is a little bit higher than when I had selected this one and this one. Okay. So that's kind of a cool little feature, is we can watch variables as our script runs. This variable list here will also always contain all of the variables in my file. So let's go ahead and add just some variables here at the end. Variable. So I'll go ahead and set an integer variable, right? Set a double variable. Okay. And so as I add these variables into my my script, they're always right here as well. So even before my script runs, here are those, my integer variable, my double variable. If I rename this, give it a new name, right, that instantly takes hold over here, so I can see what variables are in this script. So if later on, maybe 10 or 20 or 50 steps down my script, I want to use one of these variables, I can simply refer to it over here, and I know what I named it. I don't have to go back and, if I ever doubted what I might have called my variable, I can easily see what it was and grab the name from over here. So maybe later on I might want to do some double math, right? Maybe I want to multiply my direction switch, so WITCH, direction switch, multiply that by the double variable called new name. Right? I don't have to necessarily find either one of those in my script. What I was doing as I was typing that in was I was looking over here, right? So, sometimes if you're working with some of your colleagues, maybe one of you does a camel case like this, right? Direction switch. Maybe you have another colleague that instead of doing variables that way, they put an underscore in between them. Or maybe you have a different colleague that puts a space. Or maybe you kind of do that yourself, right? On Monday, you used an underscore. On Tuesday, you did a space. It's very easy to see what it was because you have your variable list here on the side. Right? And then lastly, you might be seeing this as I click here. If you simply are in one of these variable editors, instead of typing in the name, you can simply go to the side and select it. So direction switch, new name, right? So you don't even have to worry about typing it. A small typo in your variable name is impossible if you just simply select them from there. Okay, so that's variables. So variables much easier to use inside of measurement plan now. Much easier to keep track of. Combine it with debugging, very powerful tools, right? And we use variables a lot inside a measurement plan, but probably much more often than that. What I think we use, let's find it, yep, are references. So we use references all over the place inside a measurement plan, right? So in this case, one of the very first things we do here is we ask the user to select a plane, right? And it gives us a result. And then later on in this measurement plan, we probably reference that plane name at least once, probably more, but at least once. If I want to see where we reference the plane the user selected, I can come down to this sidebar again, and where it says variables, I can switch from variables to connections. And what I see is that plane one that the user selected is referenced by step 1, step 2, step 10, and step 22. Right. Very quick and easy way to see where a step might be referenced. So let's see. So this was referenced step 1, step 2, step 10, step 22. Let's look at step 10. Oh, okay, so I break it up into individual names. So I take the name the user selected, and I break it up into the collection object and object type. So that's step 10. And then step 10, we see references step 0, of course. But it's also referenced by step 12, right there. That's when I make my new plane name, right? I take the name from plane 1 and the name from plane 2, and I combine them to get our new bisection plane name. Concatenate strings. So step 12, here's all my references. So it's referenced by step 21, right there, where I construct the plane, of course. And it also references both steps 10 and 11. So very easy, cool way to see where and how your MP kind of references itself, or if you're ever doubting, if you wanted to replace this step, for instance, and you're curious what other commands inside of your script were reliant on this step, you can simply highlight it, look through here, and say, oh, okay, it's referenced by step 1, 2, 10, and 22. And before I delete this command, I might want to get all these references repointed to somewhere where where I'll want them to be after this command is deleted. Okay. So let me actually much more common, Control A. All right. So let's see here. Let's see if I've gone over most of the stuff. So the first, of course, is our search list, right? Go through our search list or our command list, and you can, of course, browse just like we always have. You can go through and browse through and find the command you want. We can also little shortcuts here to expand and collapse everything, or you can simply do your search here. Say if I was looking for, I don't know, double math operation, right? I normally just start typing in double, and then, well, double kind of creates a lot of things. So I can collapse down my entire list and go, you know what, this is a math operation, so it's going to be in here. Well, there it is, double math operation. So that's this search. The MP search here, of course, is for searching inside of the MP itself. Variable. So I can go through, there we go, and find, there's the first double variable, there's the second double variable. It highlights steps as we go back and forth. So I can easily see which step is which, or easily find a particular step inside of my measurement plan. So search, connections and variables, right? And of course debugging. So you can turn debugging on, step through your scripts. Some of the things that have always been in MP are still there. So let's see here. Really, these right here are all one thing. I select my plane, and then I make sure that the plane is a plane and that it exists and it's a valid plane. So if I want to, just like before, I can simply set some background colors for this. So maybe that plane gets a green background color. So this is the next plane. Maybe I set its background color a little bit differently. Let's give it a blue. Right. So I can still color my MP, which is a great way to highlight different sections of your measurement plan. We can also do indentation. So if I want to indent, let's see which steps might make sense to indent. Here, these two might. Usually I use indentation with loops and structures like that inside of my measurement plan, but we can indent anything. So I can select a step and just simply hit tab, and that indents it as much as I want, or shift tab will bring it back. Or I can select a range of steps and indent with tab, shift tab to remove the indentations. So two different ways there to help the readability of your measurement plan. Yep. Okay, so search that, indentation, colors. Oh, the last thing is locking. We can lock scripts. I think you guys all knew this if you've used MPs for quite a while, but we can always lock your measurement plan. We can also lock individual steps. Right? So instead of locking the entire script, I can just lock an individual step, and now I can't make any changes to that particular step. So a neat little tool you can use for when you go to deploy your measurement plans into the shop floor. You can lock them, and then it just prevents people from editing them accidentally. So you actually have to go through some trouble here. You have to unlock it first, right, and then you can edit it. So easier ways to kind of lock down your scripts a little bit, and helps with doing sort of version control, so to speak. So I could, you know, lock my script or unlock my script. Okay. So as we were going through here, any questions on the new MP editor? Hopefully everyone has had a chance to get to using it. I've been using it myself since more or less since day one. Definitely much faster, more productive with my creating and editing and debugging my measurement plans. I definitely would not personally go back to the old style editor. But occasionally, we understand that people like doing switching back and forth, so we do still have that little editor switch up in the top right corner. If you ever do want to switch back, go back to the old style, feel free to do so. But I would definitely say give this new guy a try. Much faster, much easier, much better. Yeah. So that's all I had for today. Have not really seen any questions during the webinar, but if you do have questions, as always, feel free to send us an email. That's what we're here for. Give us a call, whatever you like for getting in contact with us. As always, probably the easiest thing to do is just drop us an email. You can send it to our entire support group at support@kinematics.com, or feel free to send me an email anytime you want, and you can reach me very simply, zach@kinematics.com. So that's it. Have a great day and a great start to your week. Take care.